My name is Alice Bender, and I'm 29 years old. For 4 years, I truly believed I was building a future with my boyfriend Jack, something steady, something honest, something that felt like home in a world that didn't always make sense. I was the reliable one, the planner, the quiet strength, the woman who kept our life stitched together. Jack. He was the spontaneity, the spark, the charming social presence that everyone liked immediately, the one who made any room brighter when he walked in. Or maybe that's just what I kept telling myself. We lived together in a beautiful 3-bedroom condo, tucked into the center of the city, a place I loved because it felt like an accomplishment. At least it did, until I remembered the part nobody else knew the condo wasn't ours. It was owned by his father Richard, a retired military man with old-school morals, and a handshake that felt like a contract. A man who respected loyalty and hated shortcuts. He'd always treated me with a kind of gentle approval, even admiration. Once over a rare beer we shared. In his garage, he told me, "Alice, you've got more backbone than my son knows what to do with. Reminds me of myself when I was younger." At the time, I took it as a compliment. I didn't realize I'd need that alliance sooner than anyone expected. It started on a Tuesday. Jack came home from his marketing job practically vibrating with excitement, the same manic energy he always got when he wanted something big. He dropped onto the edge of the couch beside me, running his fingers through my hair with that performative tenderness he used whenever he was about to ask for something that made my stomach tighten. "Alice," he said, dragging out my name like he wanted it to sound sweet. "You know how Ryan and Lucas are always joking about us needing a break from work? Well, they're planning a trip to Miami next month. A guy's getaway, sun, clubs, parties. Just a chance to reset." I didn't think much of it at first. I trusted him, or I wanted to believe I still could. "That sounds fun," I said, glancing up from my laptop. "How long?" "5 days. He hesitated, then added, "The flight's kind of pricey, though. I was hoping we could put it on your Sapphire card for the points. I'll pay you back when my bonus hits." I agreed. I always agreed. I booked his flight that night, thinking I was being the supportive girlfriend letting him have a chance to unwind with his friends while I stayed back and kept the home routine running. I didn't realize I was fueling a fire I hadn't even smelled yet. 2 days later, everything detonated. Jack was in the shower when it happened. I was curled up on the sofa watching highlights from a game when his iPad lit up on the coffee table. It was synced with his phone, something I'd never paid much attention to until that moment. Normally, I ignored his notifications. But this one wasn't from Ryan or Lucas. It was from a contact saved as Kylie Jim. The preview message read, "Tell her whatever you want. Just make sure you bring that black dress she hated. I'm not sleeping on the couch this time." Everything inside me dropped like the floor had disappeared. I stared at the screen, frozen, my heartbeat punching through my ribs. I knew I shouldn't unlock it. I knew the responsible, noble choice would be to wait, to ask him first, to stay calm, rational, composed. But that one sentence, "Tell her whatever you want," destroyed any illusion of nobility. I unlocked the iPad. He hadn't changed his passcode in 3 years. I didn't find a single questionable message. I found an entire war room, a group chat named Miami Night Shift. The members weren't just his 2 male friends. There were 6 people: Ryan, Lucas, Jack, Kylie, his ex-girlfriend from the gym, and 2 other women, Madison and Brielle. And with every scroll, every screenshot of jokes about shared rooms and who's pairing with who, the truth became impossible to deny. This wasn't a guy's trip. It was a couple's trip. And Jack had volunteered himself as Kylie's roommate. The betrayal itself was enough to make my throat close. But what gutted me wasn't the cheating, it was the disrespect, the cruelty, the way he talked about me to these women. "Jack, ugh. Alice is asking about the itinerary. She's suffocating me again." Kylie. "Does she know she's just funding half this trip?" Jack. "She won't question it. She's predictable, useful, and I need the break from playing house." Kylie. "Don't worry. I'll make you forget all about her by the second night." Jack already counting on it. Useful, predictable, suffocating. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe for a moment. I took screenshots of everything: the lies, the sexual innuendos, the confirmations of shared beds, the mocking comments about me being boring, safe, stable. I airdropped them to my phone, deleted the traces, set the iPad back on the table like nothing had ever happened. And then I waited. When Jack finally walked out of the bathroom towel around his waist, Humming off key, smelling like the expensive eucalyptus scrub I had bought him for his birthday, he barely looked at me. "What's with the serious face?" he asked, toweling his hair. "I was thinking about your trip," I said. My voice came out steady, frighteningly steady. "Where are you guys staying again?" "A hotel," he lied immediately. "Lucas booked it." "No Airbnb?" I asked. "No, just a hotel. Why?" I watched him pull on a shirt, noticed the casual way he avoided my eyes. "Because I know Kylie is going." He froze. His shoulders tightened. He turned back toward me, face paling, then darkening. "Who?" he finally asked. "Kylie, and Madison, and Brielle. And I know you're staying in a 3-bedroom Airbnb, and I know who you're sharing with." For a long moment, the room felt vacuumed of air. Then he made his fatal mistake, the one all cheaters make. He stopped addressing the betrayal and went straight to attacking the discovery. "You went through my iPad," he snapped. "You violated my privacy." "Alice, what the hell is wrong with you?" "I saw a notification," I said quietly. "And I saw everything." He rolled his eyes, scoffed, crossed his arms. "God, you're dramatic." "And you're a liar," I replied, my voice a whisper, sharp enough to cut through metal. He stared at me, analyzing, calculating, and then his expression changed, hardened into something smug. "Fine," he said. "Let's make this simple." He held up 2 fingers. "Option 1, you get over your insecurities and let me go on the trip. Option 2, we're done. You can be single." He smirked, waiting for the panic, waiting for the begging, waiting for me to cling to our 4-year life like he assumed I always would. And by the time I get back from the gym, he added dismissively, "I expect you to be over this little tantrum." He grabbed his bag, slammed the door, drove away. He thought he'd given me 2 choices. He forgot I always had a third. I stood at the window, watched his car turn the corner, and picked up my phone. I didn't call a friend. I didn't call a therapist. I didn't call my mother. I called Richard. His voice answered on the second ring, warm and unaware. "Hey, Alice, everything all right?" "Are you home?" I asked. "Alice, what happened?" "It's about Jack," I said quietly, "and the lease. And I think you need to see something." Richard exhaled slowly, the kind of breath a man takes when he knows peace is about to end. "Come over," he said. "I'll put on coffee." I grabbed my keys. The third option had begun. When I pulled into Richard's driveway, he was standing in the open garage, hands deep in the engine of an old lawnmower. He looked up at the sound of my car, ready to offer his usual warm wave. But the moment he saw my expression, the warmth drained from his eyes. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped closer, studying me like he could sense something was broken before I even said a word. "Coffee or a beer?" he asked, unsure which direction this conversation was about to go. "It's 11 a.m., I said, forcing a thin smile that died instantly. "Neither. We need to talk inside." He didn't argue, didn't press. He simply nodded once and led me through the garage door and into the kitchen where sunlight pooled across the countertops like it was trying too hard to make the morning look normal. I sat down at the table where we'd shared dozens of quiet conversations about life, work, small problems, and harmless frustrations. This time my hands were shaking. I didn't try to hide it. "I love your son," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "But today he gave me an ultimatum. He told me he was going on a trip with 3 other women, including his ex, and if I had a problem with it, I could be single." Richard froze. His brows pulled together so tightly they formed a single hard line across his forehead. 3 women, he repeated. He told his mother it was a guy's trip. "It isn't," I said, sliding Jack's iPad toward him. "Richard, I'm sorry, but you need to read the entire chat, from the top." He didn't rush. He didn't get defensive. He just put on his glasses and began scrolling. I watched the transformation happen slowly. At first confusion, then a frown, then the slow, suffocating collapse of a father realizing the boy he raised had grown into someone he didn't recognize. When he reached the messages where Jack joked about using me, something in his expression cracked. But the message that made his breath hitch wasn't about me. It was the one where Jack mocked him. "He called me pathetic," Richard said, the words hollowed from the inside. His own father. I swallowed hard. "He called me useful." Richard set the iPad down gently, as if dropping it too quickly would shatter something already fragile. He pressed both palms onto the table, staring down at the wood like it held answers. "I raised him to stand on his own feet," he said, voice thick. "Not to this." He couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't try to fill the silence. We let it sit there, heavy and suffocating, stretching between us like a dark shadow. Finally, he straightened shoulders, lifting with a resolve that came from someplace deeper than anger. "The lease is month to month, yes?" he asked. "Yes. And I co-signed for his car." He shook his head, muttering under his breath. "Of all the things." He looked at me, then fully intensely, with eyes that weren't confused or heartbroken anymore, but certain. "You're choosing the third option," he said quietly. "I am. Then you have my support." He stood from the table, grabbed his truck keys, and nodded toward the door. "Let's go." We drove separately to the condo. The air inside the unit felt colder than usual, as if it already knew something irreversible was about to happen. Richard didn't pause in the entryway. He walked straight to the hallway closet, pulled out the stack of flattened moving boxes, and began assembling them with crisp, determined movements. "Pack only what is his," he instructed. "If you bought it, it stays. If you paid for it, it stays." I nodded and we got to work. There was no yelling, no breaking, no frantic storm of emotion. Just quiet, focused movement, the kind you see in people who have made a choice and refuse to look back. I folded his clothes and placed them into boxes. Richard packed his books and electronics. We collected his bathroom items, his shoes, his scattered belongings. At one point, Richard paused with a framed photo in his hands, a picture of him and Jack fishing when Jack was still a teenager. They were both smiling, carefree, sunburned. Richard stared at it for a long moment before setting it face down inside the box. "He wasn't always like this," he murmured. None of us said anything after that. 2 hours later, the condo looked bigger than it ever had. Too big, too empty, like the footprint of a life had been lifted up and removed in neat rectangular shapes. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a sheet of notebook paper. The marker felt steady in my hand, steadier than I expected. When I finished writing, I placed the note beside the spare key Jack had once given me, with a dramatic, overly sentimental line about shared futures. Now it meant nothing. Richard paused in the doorway, watching me. "He will come back angry," he warned. "He will try to twist this." "I know. And he will try to worm his way back in." "He's blocked," I said. "Everywhere." Richard nodded. He didn't smile. He simply understood. We stepped outside, and he closed the tailgate of his truck. The boxes inside looked strangely small for something that held an entire chapter of my life. He climbed into the driver's seat, then leaned out the open window. "Alice," he said, "you didn't deserve any of this, and I'm truly sorry my son put you through it." I nodded back. "I'm sorry too." He drove away, carrying the last pieces of the life I thought I had. When I walked back inside, the silence wasn't the painful kind. It was clean, cleansing, like the air finally had room to circulate without the weight of someone else's chaos crowding it. I sat on the couch, the one item in the living room that was truly mine, and let the silence settle around me. Not as emptiness, but as space. Space I hadn't had in years. I poured a small glass of whiskey, held it between my palms, and felt the warmth seep into my hands. My life wasn't falling apart. It was being rebuilt. And all it took was choosing the option he never thought I would. Jack returned to the condo about 2 hours after Richard drove away with the last box of his belongings. I wasn't there to see it in person by then. I had packed an overnight bag and gone to stay at a friend's place just in case he tried to corner me. But I saw everything on the security footage from my phone. The moment he opened the door, his entire posture shifted. His shoulders lifted in confusion. He stepped inside, looking around like he had walked into the wrong apartment. The condo echoed. The vanity items were gone. His shoes were gone. His scent was gone. Even the framed photos on the mantle, the ones he loved posting on social media when he wanted to show off our perfect relationship, were missing. He spun in a circle, stopping when he saw the note on the kitchen island. He picked it up, read it, and for a moment his face was blank, like his brain couldn't compute what he was seeing. Then the rage hit. He crumpled the note, threw it across the kitchen, and shouted something I couldn't hear from the camera. He dialed my number. Blocked. Dialed again. Blocked. Then he dialed Richard. That call I would hear about later. Richard didn't yell at him, didn't scold, didn't attack. He simply said, "Your belongings are in my driveway. It's going to rain. I suggest you come get them." And then he added, "Do not bring that iPad into my house. I know what you used it for." Jack had no defense to offer. Richard hung up. Most people, when their life falls apart, take a step back. Reflect. Accept consequences. Jack was not most people. Instead of seeing the crater he'd created, he chose anger, chose pride, chose the performance. That night, he posted a story on Instagram from Richard's driveway. A selfie, messy hair, and forced smirk captioned, "Trash took itself out. Miami, here I come." And just like that, he doubled down on the version of himself that had destroyed everything. He still went to Miami. And because I had canceled the flight, I booked on my card, something credit protection allowed. When an authorized user violated the relationship terms, his ticket was voided. He had to buy a fully last-minute seat using his own card. It maxed out instantly. A few hours later, he posted another story, a shaky airport terminal boomerang, with a caption full of bravado and glitter emojis. I knew that look. It was the same one he wore whenever he was terrified but pretending not to be. But Miami didn't care about his pride. The disaster began on night one. From what I learned later through mutual friends who rapidly shifted to my side after the screenshots leaked, the so-called party crew didn't want to deal with a miserable, homeless, attention-starved man. The energy he brought wasn't the fun, carefree vibe they'd hoped for. It was desperation. Kylie, the ex-girlfriend from the gym, had initially flirted heavily through the group chat, but once they arrived, her behavior shifted. Jack hooked up with her the first night, believing that made him her priority. But on the second day, she openly flirted with other men at the Airbnb pool. When Jack confronted her, she told him, "Relax, we aren't dating. You're the one who said you wanted a break from housewife life. I'm just helping you loosen up." By the third night, she brought someone else back to the room she was supposed to share with Jack. He slept on the couch. Ryan and Lucas, who always hyped him up, spent most of their time with the girls they'd flown down to meet. Madison and Brielle cared more about club hopping than comforting the man who had suddenly turned into an emotional liability. He spent 5 days burning through the last money he had, overpriced drinks, surcharges, Uber XL rides, poolside fun he couldn't afford. His card declined twice on day 4. He hid it by pretending the machine was broken. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. Meanwhile, his life back home sat in cardboard boxes in Richard's garage. His father refused to let him inside the main house. Jack slept in his childhood bedroom, which looked exactly the same as when he was 14, the perfect metaphor for a man who had never grown up. While Jack spiraled, my world moved in the opposite direction. Silence has a way of clearing space you didn't realize was cluttered. I woke up earlier, drank cold water with lemon, felt my chest light for the first time in years. The air in the condo didn't feel stale now that it was empty. It felt new, clean, mine. I started going to the gym with purpose, not as emotional escape, but as a way to burn the last traces of adrenaline trauma leaves behind. My body responded quickly. My posture straightened, my face softened, my energy sharpened. I didn't recognize myself in the best way possible. Work improved too. Without Jack's constant chaos draining my evenings, I took on a project I'd been postponing. My focus returned. Calm made me competent again. I got a promotion. My sleep improved. My bank account stabilized. My breathing slowed. My world expanded. And through all of this, Richard checked on me, not out of pity, but out of genuine respect. He apologized again for his son's actions, but more quietly now, like he realized apologies didn't fix anything, but kindness helped fill the gaps. His texts were brief and considerate. "Let me know if you need anything. Stop by the condo, change the lock. You made the right choice. Proud of you." Those messages mattered more than he knew. But silence is expensive. It forces toxic people to hear themselves, and that's something they cannot stand. It wasn't long before the first flying monkey arrived. A message from Madison. "Alice, he's a mess. He's crying nonstop. He's staying at a motel since his dad won't let him in. You can't just abandon him. It's cruel." Cruel. I blocked her immediately. Then blocked Madison, then Brielle, then Lucas, then Ryan. One by one, I shut every door that tried to drag me back to the fire I had finally escaped. For 6 weeks, I heard nothing else. No calls, no text, no attempts to find me. Until one Tuesday evening. I was leaving work, my heels clicking softly across the concrete floor of the company parking garage when I unlocked my car and heard rapid footsteps behind me. "Alice, wait." I didn't even have to turn to recognize the voice. The echo of desperation gave it away. I turned slowly. Jack stood under the harsh fluorescent lighting, eyes, hollow hair, unwashed, wearing a hoodie I recognized as one of mine he'd stolen years ago. His entire body looked smaller, like someone had deflated him. "You're hard to find," he said, trying for a tired laugh. "You blocked my number." I didn't move toward him. I didn't soften. I didn't invite conversation. "What do you want, Jack?" He swallowed, glancing at my car like he expected me to run. "We need to talk." I waited. "I'm serious, Alice. My dad won't even look at me. He told me I have to pay him back for the car, or he's taking it back. And he said, you turned him against me." I stared at him. "No," I said, "you did that." His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes glistened with the beginnings of weaponized tears, the same kind that used to control me. Nothing inside me moved. Nothing softened. Nothing cracked. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "Miami was horrible. Kylie was terrible. I spent the whole time thinking about you." I didn't blink. "You didn't miss me," I said. "You missed stability. You missed the apartment. You missed having someone clean up the messes you create. He took a step toward me. Please, let's just reset. I'm staying at a motel. I'm scared, Alice. Just let me come home. There it was, the plea he always thought would work. Except this time it slid right off me. There is no home, I said softly. Not for you, not anymore. And for the first time, I watched Jack truly understand what choosing the third option meant. He wasn't losing me. He had already lost me. He was only now realizing it. Jack didn't take my answer like a man who understood consequences. He took it like a child who had never been told no without a safety net waiting to catch him. His face flickered between disbelief, panic, and something uglier, petulant rage barely held together by the thin thread of wounded pride. What do you mean there's no home? He demanded, stepping closer, as if proximity could change reality. Alice, come on, we've lived together for years. Don't act like this is final. It is final, I said. I moved out of the condo last week. He froze. For a moment, everything in his expression cracked open: confusion, hurt, anger, fear. He stepped back like I had shoved him. You moved, he repeated, voice hollow. Yes. Why the hell would you do that? His voice rose, echoing against the cold concrete. You're seriously throwing away everything we built. Over what over? Some texts over a stupid trip. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed. My car keys felt warm in my palm, steady against the tremble he hoped to trigger in me. You didn't just send some texts, I said. You mocked me. You lied to me. You planned to cheat on me using money I earned. And then you gave me an ultimatum. I tilted my head slightly. You don't get to act surprised that I picked neither of the options you offered. He dragged a hand down his face, pacing in a tight circle. God, Alice, you're impossible. You always twist things into the worst version. I was stressed. I needed a break. Everyone vents about their partner sometimes. You didn't vent, I replied calmly. You minimized me. You ridiculed me. You treated me like an ATM. I didn't. You did. He stopped talking, because there was no other answer. The air between us thickened heavy with the realization settling over him like a slow suffocation. He'd underestimated the magnitude of what he'd destroyed. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. Not sincere, just frightened. I have nowhere to go, he said quietly. My dad won't let me in the house. He told me to pay off the car or lose it. I'm at a motel. Do you understand that? A motel. There was a time when hearing that would have shattered me. I would have felt responsible, guilty, compelled to fix everything. But now nothing inside me moved. That's not my problem, I said. His eyes widened with disbelief. Are you serious? After everything we've been through? After 4 years? You're just going to let me drown. I didn't throw you into the water, I replied. You jumped. His face contorted into something desperate and furious. You're heartless. No, I said softly. I just stopped setting myself on fire to keep you warm. He inhaled sharply like the words struck him physically. Then the anger took over. Full force. No mask. You think you're better than me, he snapped. You think you're some strong, independent woman now. Please. You're boring, Alice. Predictable. You'll die boring. You're not the type of woman anyone stays excited about. Somewhere deep inside me, months ago, that would have hurt. Now it felt like listening to a stranger scream at passing cars. I know, I said. He blinked. What? I know I'm boring, I repeated with a shrug. I pay my bills. I keep my word. I don't lie. I don't cheat. I don't need constant validation to feel alive. That's boring to you. But to someone who's grown up, that's stability. That's a partner. That's a future. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, he looked small to me. Not physically, emotionally. As if all the illusions he'd built about himself were finally collapsing. You can't just leave me like this, he said. But this time his voice cracked around the edges. Alice, please. I'm begging you. You already left, I replied. The moment you chose a woman who couldn't even remember your birthday over the partner who kept your entire life functioning. His tears finally gathered, clinging to his lashes. In the past, they would have disarmed me. Now they just looked like the natural consequence of a story he wrote himself. Without another word, I turned, opened my car door, and slid into the driver's seat. He lunged, placing his hand on the window eyes, burning with panic. Don't drive away. Don't you dare drive away from me. You can't just replace me. My phone lit up on the dashboard as Bluetooth connected. A message appeared on the screen. Adrian, dinner's almost ready. Pick up wine if you can. There was a small smiley face at the end. Jack saw it. And in that moment, everything inside him snapped. His expression twisted shame, rage, jealousy, all crashing together in an ugly tangle. He pounded the window with his fist. Who the hell is Adrian? He shouted. You're already talking to someone. Wow. You didn't waste any time, did you? I knew it. You're exactly what you said you weren't. I didn't flinch. I shifted the car into reverse. He pounded again, more desperate now. Alice, don't do this. Don't you dare. I backed out slow and steady, watching him shrink in the rearview mirror. His figure became smaller with every foot of distance, his voice turning into a muffled echo swallowed by the concrete walls. When I reached the exit ramp, I checked the mirror one last time. He was standing in the middle of the garage alone, furious, terrified, and utterly powerless. Exactly where his choices had led him. I drove toward the streetlights calm for the first time in years. A bottle of Cabernet waited at the store. A warm dinner waited somewhere else. And behind me, the past collapsed quietly into the dark. I didn't look back once I reached the street. The glow of the city lights washed over the windshield, softening everything the parking garage had made harsh and hollow. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing slow, and for the first time in months, I felt something even better than relief. I felt free. At a red light, I glanced at the dashboard again. Adrian's message was still there, bright against the screen. Dinner's almost ready. Pick up wine if you can. There was no pressure in those words, no expectation, no emotional demand, just warmth. Just a man cooking dinner after a long day, thinking of me, not because he needed something, but because he wanted to include me in the softness of his life. It was a stark contrast to everything I'd been carrying. I pulled into a quiet wine shop, grabbed a Cabernet I knew, paired well with anything, and walked back to my car with the ease of someone who had finally stopped apologizing for wanting peace. On the drive to Adrian's place, the night air felt cool through the cracked window. My hair lifted in the breeze. My shoulders loosened. My body stopped tensing in anticipation of another argument, another crisis, another apology I didn't deserve to give. It was strange how quickly you could remember who you were without someone else's chaos clouding the edges. When I arrived at Adrian's apartment, warm light glowed through the windows, shadows moving gently inside as he stirred something on the stove. I knocked once, and he opened the door with that soft, tired smile he always seemed to save only for me. "You found wine," he said. "You made dinner," I replied. We exchanged the kind of look that didn't demand anything. No tension, no guilt, no unspoken scorekeeping. Just two adults choosing to share a quiet evening. The apartment smelled like sautéed garlic and fresh herbs. The table was set simply, nothing extravagant, nothing performative, everything intentional. I handed him the bottle and he opened it while I slipped out of my coat and eased into a chair. There was safety in the simplicity. He poured 2 glasses. "You okay?" he asked gently, watching me rather than studying me. I appreciated that difference. "I am," I said honestly. For the first time in a long while. We clinked glasses. The wine was smooth, warm, grounding. Dinner was calm and slow, the kind of meal where conversation didn't have to fill every space. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. It all felt natural. And the entire time I didn't think about Jack. Not once. After we ate, we sat on the couch, our legs almost touching, but not quite. There was no rush, no expectation, just presence. At some point, Adrian asked quietly, "Do you want to talk about today?" I thought about it. About the parking garage. About Jack's desperation. About the pounding on my window. About the look in his eyes when he realized he had no more power over me. But the truth was simpler. "No," I said, "I don't." Adrian nodded, like that answer made perfect sense. "You don't owe anyone your pain," he said softly. "Least of all, a man who caused it." Those words settled in my chest with a kind of peace I didn't know I needed. Later, when I finally left his apartment, the night was cool and quiet. The city felt softer, gentler, like it had finally stopped pressing its weight on me. I drove home with the window down, letting the cold air fill my lungs. My apartment was silent when I stepped inside. Not empty, peaceful. I turned on a warm lamp, placed my keys in the dish, and stood there for a moment, taking in the stillness. I realized then I didn't miss Jack. Not the version he pretended to be, not the version he accused me of seeing, not the version he sold to his friends, and especially not the version who believed I was a burden he needed a vacation from. What I missed was myself, and piece by piece she was coming back. That night I slept deeply. No nightmares, no jolting awake at 3 a.m., no phantom dread, just quiet, uninterrupted rest. The next morning, when sunlight spilled across my pillow, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light. Days passed. Jack didn't show up again. He didn't call. He didn't find a new way to reach me. Maybe he finally understood the truth, or maybe he ran out of energy to keep fighting a battle he had already lost. Mutual friends told me bits and pieces, none of which surprised me. He was back at the motel, His card company froze his account. He was begging for shifts at work. Kylie had blocked him. Ryan and Lucas stopped responding. Richard refused to let him step foot into the main house. He took everything he had and threw it into the fire. He was only now realizing flames don't care who started them. As for me, I kept moving forward, slowly, quietly, intentionally. I went to the gym. I focused on work. I had dinner with coworkers. I met Adrian's friends. I rebuilt my world not around someone else, but around myself. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset behind the buildings, the moment hit me. The third option wasn't leaving him. The third option was choosing myself, choosing peace, choosing boundaries, choosing a life where someone else's chaos wasn't my responsibility, choosing a future where my heart wasn't handed out like a coupon waiting to be redeemed, a future that looked nothing like the past Jack tried to trap me in, and everything like freedom. In the weeks that followed, my life didn't become perfect. It became real, quiet, steady, the kind of life that isn't loud enough to impress strangers but solid enough to hold a future. I woke up without dread, sitting in my chest. I drank my morning coffee without bracing for an argument. I went to work and actually enjoyed the sense of routine, of predictability, of building something meaningful without having to fix someone else in the process. Richard checked in every so often, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Our conversations became lighter. He told me he had listed the condo for sale. He said he didn't want the memories either. I understood. Letting go wasn't just something I was doing. It was something he needed too. Jack, on the other hand, remained a distant ripple in the background of other people's stories. I didn't ask, but sometimes things found their way to me. A friend would mention he had tried to move in with someone from work. Another would say he'd gotten into a fight at a bar. Someone else heard he'd quit the gym because Kylie started dating a trainer. Everything about his life seemed to be a slow unraveling, like he'd pulled the wrong thread and the whole thing collapsed in his hands. There was a time when that knowledge would have made my chest tighten with guilt, but now all I felt was distance. The kind of distance that comes when you step out of a storm and finally understand it wasn't your job to hold up the sky. One Friday evening, I got dinner with Adrian again. He had a way of talking about his day that made even the dull moments sound warm. We split a bottle of wine. We talked about a new series he wanted to watch. We laughed at something small and silly. He walked me to my car afterward, his hands in his pockets, eyes soft under the streetlights. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked again. I nodded. Not because I was pretending, but because it was finally true. "I'm okay," I said. "Really." When I drove home that night, the roads were nearly empty, and the city looked calmer than usual, like it had settled into sleep. I didn't rush. I didn't overthink. I didn't replay old arguments in my head. My life felt like mine again. At home, I turned on a single lamp and curled up on the couch with a blanket, the window slightly cracked, so the cool night air could drift in. I breathed slowly, deeply, letting the quiet sink into me. The world didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt soft at the edges, forgiving. My phone buzzed, once an unknown number. I didn't check it. I didn't wonder. I simply put the phone face down and let the moment stay undisturbed. Some doors don't deserve to be reopened even out of curiosity. Instead, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and realized something that had taken me too long to understand. Choosing peace isn't about revenge. It isn't about proving someone wrong. It isn't about getting ahead or moving on faster. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you abandoned just to keep someone else comfortable. It's choosing to put down the weight you were never meant to carry. It's choosing to step out of the chaos. It's choosing the version of you that survived everything and still wakes up hopeful. It's choosing the third option, the one where you stop trying to make broken people whole and start building a life that doesn't require you to shrink. A life that feels like space. A life that feels like breath. A life that feels like finally coming home.